much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. You know I am your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. What do I want to do? I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today I want to get you fired up about my guest author, S R Longshore, and her book, Extricate. So let me tell you more about Ms. Longshore. She is an accounting graduate with an undergraduate in health information technology. However, she has been writing all of her life. Her favorite things to write are poems. She once wrote a poem so well in high school that her teacher thought she had plagiarized it. And when she asked for it back, it somehow got misplaced. She wrote another poem in college, and her instructor suggested that she should try her hand at writing. Well, she never thought much about it until an elderly relative suggested the same thing. The passing of that relative is what motivated her to finally write. She wanted to do this as a tribute to her. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that that would definitely inspire me as well. Y'all know I talk about my grandmother all the time and how they inspire us to be our best. Well, we are going to talk to that author today. So go on, get your coffee, get your tea, get comfy, get cozy, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Sherry. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Good morning, Dr. Angela, and thank you so much for inviting me.
I am so excited to talk to a fellow female author about their book. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit more about who you are and what makes you the person that you are. Now, understand that you've always had kind of a love of writing, but it took you a minute or two to finally go on and get that published work. Was there a moment in your life where you realized the power of words?
Yes, there was a time when I realized it. I had received an email in my office, and I answered it. And when I answered it, it inspired a lot of people. And I did not realize at the time that it was like a little prayer I had said. And what I had said was that I wanted to be a healer because I had gone through so many things, and it just seems like I didn't get the help that I desired. So I wanted to be a healer, and I asked God that let me say something to people that would help heal them from the inside out, because a lot of times we just camouflage our situations, but we are still wounded on the inside. And what happened after that, when I spoke to a friend about something, she looked at me and said, "How did you know that?" And I realized then that my words were very healing to her. And then another person had said, "Your words cut so deep." Then I realized that I had to be very careful with my speech because I could hurt somebody or I could help somebody. And that's when I realized that maybe there is something to my words, and maybe I need to start writing them down.
You know, I love how we think that what we're doing sometimes is just a drop in the bucket, not realizing that we're actually bringing the whole bucket when we do what we're supposed to do. You know, the person is instead gets drenched in all of the love and the intention and the hope and the healing and the peace that we're trying to give, or we think that, you know, we just have a little dropper full. And I love when people are able to confirm for us that we're doing exactly what it is that we are supposed to be doing. Now, when it comes to your book, I always ask this question, and that is, did you find that the title of the book came to you first and you wrote around the title? Or did you find that the title evolved out of the writings? What was your way of titling your book?
I wrote my 2 stories first. I've always loved to tell short stories and entertain people. I wrote the 2 stories first, from 2 dreams that I had. I dream a lot, and the relative that passed away used to love me to call her and tell her of my dreams, and she kept telling me, you need to write those down. That would make a good book. So anyway, I wrote the 2 stories, and I looked at them, and I said, boy, they are very, very different. How in the world can I put these 2 stories into one book? Well, I came up with 2 names that I absolutely loved, but somebody else had them, and then I was just like, I don't know what to do. So at that time, I was paying bills, and I happened to read my vehicle, I believe, insurance policy, and there was this word, and I had no idea what it meant. So I decided to look it up, and it said about help is when you need help and assistance with something. And so I said, oh, I'm going to use that name because maybe other people aren't familiar with it, and they'll pick up my book just to figure out what is that about. And it is about 2 people that were in 2 different situations who needed help. So I really felt like God gave me that word.
You know, I have found that over the years that it seems like when something is, sometimes people say, well, if it's too good to be true, or that type of way. But I have found that sometimes when things are easy, it means that that's a God moment there, that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, not to be confused with it. It could be too good to be true, and it's like it just comes to you, and it's like, thanks, God. That was awesome. I didn't have to rack my brain for that at all. And here we are. And look at what happened simply because you followed that prompting. Now, for someone who may have come on the program a little bit later, can you tell us a little bit more about what is your book about, or is there a particular character that you find really stands out?
Well, my first story in the book is about a girl who goes through life, and she tries to do all the right things, but she's really not happy deep down inside. And I think a lot of people are like that. They are going along with their day-to-day routines, but they do it because they need the money, and they're grumbling and complaining at the same time, because a lot of people have not realized that money is not the same thing as happiness. That's why they keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing, but it's never enough, and they're never satisfied. And that's the same situation this young lady was in until something came along and she realized that she needed to do what was deep in her heart that made her happy all the time. Because when you do what you love to do, regardless of whether you have good days or bad days, it keeps you motivated to keep doing it because you're doing it from your heart and not from a need or a pressure. So that's my first story. And the second story is about kind of like my husband and I, we used to travel a lot back home. I did have a dream similar to this, and I used the experiences from my husband and I traveling back and forth. But sometimes as we would travel, weird things would happen. It's just like, I don't care how much you plan, something goes wrong. And so the second story is like that. Things happen, but you can get through it, and don't take little things, like you said, for granted, because those little things could be a warning or a side note to say that, let me think about this before I do it. A lot of times we just brush things off. Now, both of the stories are true, totally fictional. They're not true at all, and my second story it has about a charm in it. I'm not trying to get people to believe in charms or anything. This is totally imaginary, but it's just the concept that things can help you. You don't have to do everything by rule of thumb. Sometimes things happen out of the norm that we just tend to brush off, and we later look back and say, boy, if I just had listened, or that was a clue. So that's kind of what my second story is about.
I love it. I love it. Now, when you're writing, and especially with stories that are fictional, you have to name your characters. How do you come up with the names? Like, how do you decide that this person will be named that as opposed to someone else being named that, or a nickname, or how do you figure that out?
Well, it just depends on the story. A lot of times it may sound really crazy, but I believe when you have a gift, it is just something that happens from within. I've written 4 stories, 2 I have published in the book that Extricate, but the names just came up as I began to write, and I just went with it. Now, in another story that I've written, the names are important because they relate directly to the story. They function in the story, so their names are a part of the characters that they are. So it really just depends.
I can understand that. And it's funny that you say that, because it's so many times people will say, you look like a, and then there's a name associated with it, like, oh, you look like a Jennifer, or yeah, I can see that you're a Stacy, or whatever the name is. So if I'm understanding you, it seems like that's kind of the same way that happens with your characters. When a particular name comes to you, the character kind of takes on that persona as well. I like it. I like it. Now, when you're writing, do you find that you need to have a particular environment? Like, do you need it to be quiet? Do you need to be away from everyone? Do you want to go like to a Starbucks and just have that ambient noise around you? What's your environment like?
Well, I prefer quiet. I am pretty much a loner and a thinker and a daydreamer. So I do prefer quiet, but actually I get inspiration from everything, life itself. I really get inspiration. I could be sitting somewhere and looking at something, and something hits my eye, and I take that one thing and I just daydream. It just goes all over the place, and the next thing you know, I'm writing another story.
I can even. Now, do you think that having a great imagination helps a writer? Because there may be someone listening that's saying, well, I would love to write, but I'm not a daydreamer. So does that mean I don't have a great imagination? Do you think that having an imagination helps, no matter to what degree of an imagination? Do you think that helps?
Well, for me, being a fictional writer, yes, I think imagination is very important. Maybe for someone else, no. But for me, making up things, yes. Now, if you're writing nonfiction and you're basing it on facts, most likely I would probably say no. But for me, yes, I need all the imagination I can get, which kind of came to me naturally because I am definitely a dreamer.
Yes. It's so interesting because when I'm doing workshops and all of that, and I guess now webinars, when we're talking about the various types of people that we need to have in our support system, in our team of folks we know, people always kind of laugh when I say we need dreamers in our circles, and it's like, why? And it's like, because they have the imagination. They are the ones that help us see the stuff that we might not see, the things that kind of bend the usual, the thinking outside of the box. So having those dreamers and having those visionaries around us really do help to make our lives better. And I tell you, we have some major authors out there that if they did not have an imagination, they would not be best-selling authors. So I have to agree. If you're writing fiction, you need to be able to think outside of the box. Well, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, if you could please, can you remind everyone what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we follow you online?
Well, the title of my book is Extricate, and I'm the author, S R Longshore. That's Longshore. And you can find my book at S R Longshore Writes with an S, WRITES.com, or you can find it at Author House. I'm not presently on social media, but if you would like to contact me personally, you can contact me at slongshore @Cox, that's COX.net, NET.
All righty, listeners, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
Discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
We're home during COVID-19, but we're not alone. New Life Pastoral Counseling can help. For affordable Christian counseling, visit newlifepastoralcounseling.com or call 562-209-2083 today.
Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right, you can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know, which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative? I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is S R Longshore, and we're talking about her book, Extricate. Now, I love the title of that book. You know, it already sounds intriguing simply because it's a word that you don't usually use in your everyday language. So it's like, ooh, okay, so what are we talking about here? A bit of mystery, a little intrigue, something that's going to inspire you because you know something happened, but there's a positive ending. And I love books that cause you to use your imagination just by simply reading the title. I know we're not supposed to judge a book by the cover, but we often do, and I think this is a book that you are going to enjoy. So I want to ask you about your message. Many times when we're writing, we want to make sure that the reader gets the message that we're putting down. You may say a particular sentence in one spot, another one in another spot, or you may just flat out put it on the page and say, like, here's the nugget. How did you decide on how you wanted to convey the message in your book?
Well, I wanted to convey the message in a way that anybody could relate to it. One thing I try to stay away from, unless it's necessary to the story, are stereotypes. I want people to be able to read it and say, that's me. I don't want to say, oh, that only happens to people here, that only happens to people there. So a lot of times when I write, it's about a person with a real type of problem and can handle it and solve it a real type of way. It's not a money thing. It's not a family thing. It's just a situational thing.
You know, I find that I do like it when an author leaves it maybe open-ended. I don't know if that's the best word, but kind of leaves it vague that way, and they don't include the stereotypes, because you are able to, as the reader, interject your own person in there, like what that person looks like, or how you believe they would be if you could literally take them off the page and put them before you. I'm a type of person that I read a book and the movie is created in my mind. You know, so I can read and say, oh, yeah, this person would be great as that character, and I follow along that way on the journey that the writer is taking me on. So I think that is an awesome idea. Now, as far as how to read your book, and you mentioned that there are two stories that are going on. Should you read it from cover to cover, or are you able to open it up, kind of pick like a chapter, and just start reading? How should you read the book?
Well, I would think that the best way to start with a story, it doesn't matter whether you start with the first one or the second one because they're totally different, But if you start with a chapter, you need to have the chapters before because everything leads to another thing. I love suspense. I love twisted. I love to keep you thinking, I wonder why that happened, or to look back and say, oh, now I see why that happened. So you can't skip around too much because you're going to miss an important clue.
Gotcha. So you can't fast forward through the movie. You shouldn't fast forward through the book. I love it. I love it. Because you know how some people say, well, I like to read the last page or the last chapter of the book so I know how the story ends, and then I go back and I read it from the beginning. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So thank you for that prompting there. You must read the chapter prior to get the total understanding and the context. Love it. Now, what were your favorite parts of creating the book, writing the book? Did you have a particular story that you liked more than another, a particular character, a particular chapter? Tell us that.
Well, actually, that's kind of funny because the people that I dedicated the book inspired me the most. I thought a lot about them when I wrote it. So in the first one, I do have a favorite character. The young lady is dealing with herself. And she has a neighbor who is ornery. She does not care for her. The neighbor does not care for the young lady in the story. And the young lady does her best to try to get along with the lady, but she's almost to the point like, if I see her, I see her. If I don't, I don't. So I really like this person because that person is very pivotal to the story. It will let you know that you have to be careful when you try and brush people off. You never know, that might be the very person you need to help you out. You just can't judge a book by its cover, like you said earlier.
You really, really do not know. Funny story, talking about you never know. I remember I was doing a wedding one day, and this particular couple, they were running a little bit late, and one of the guests wanted refreshments. So I had on a black dress. I didn't have my robe on yet. Had on a black dress. And I was just, kind of standing over in the corner. And a woman walks over to me and she says, "Can you get me some refreshments?" And I remember I said, I'm not sure, where that would be, but perhaps you can ask one of the wait staff. She says, oh, okay. So she thinks, that I'm not being helpful. Oh, to see her face when I put my robe on and I come out and I say, "Please rise for the bride." Her jaw just drops so much. So it's true. You just never know who you're talking to or what's going on. So we have to be mindful and kind to everyone that we meet. You nailed it there. Now, for many writers, we have one book. We may want 2 books. We may want a series of books, or we're going to write until we can't type another letter. What are your writing? What is in your writing future? What are your plans?
Well, I decided that I wanted to continue to write down my dreams. I think they are very different, and I think they're different because I have a lot of hidden inspiration in them. I'm trying to inspire people without them even realize it while they're reading it, so they won't just think like, oh, this is just, a gospel book or something like that. I'm using real-life situation to inspire people in a real-life way with a real inspiration from above without them knowing it. They'll get it at the end, but they won't see it coming, when it's coming to them. So I try to do things like that, and I try to keep my book very clean, if I could use that word. Right. I feel like that story is important. A lot of times when you look at things on TV, it's all about the drama that the people are going through, and there's very little about the story or actually what they are trying to do. Like if they're trying to catch a bank robber, you don't hear as much about what's going on in the bank robber. You hear about all the problems going on in the office, why they can't do their job. And to me, I'm tired of the drama. I like a good story, a suspense story. You know, I only develop the characters as they are needed to be developed. I like the story to pop. That's how I like to do it.
It's so funny that you say that, because I am rereading The Alchemist, and I just read the line where he's talking about how if he wrote a book, that he wouldn't have these unnecessary characters in there, that he would give each character an opportunity to develop so that the reader wouldn't get confused. And it's like, that is an awesome thing to do. So I love that you say that. Now, as far as your stories are concerned, someone may be saying, you know, Dr. Angela, Ms. Longshore, we hear people always saying, well, my book is the best, and my stories are different than everyone else's stories. Yeah. So I want to give you an opportunity to tell us how do you see your stories as being different from other stories, or what makes your stories unique?
Well, they're short, first of all. They're not long and drawn out. And like I said earlier, they do relate very much to situations that we go through on a regular basis. They're not too far to the left, so you don't have situations where you have 20 people running after one person. They're in a relationship here, and then they're in a relationship there, and you get caught up in a lot of drama. They are just stories on people and their situations, and the only thing you need to know basically about it is their situation. So they're pretty plain, but the way I believe that I present it is in a different twist. And it's hard for me to really describe it. It's something that you would have to read yourself. Now, if you would just like to take the first chapter and read, then you can kind of tell where I'm coming from. But I'm more like the type of writer. I grew up loving Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone is, 30 minutes to an hour, but you get so much out of it. I love things like The Outer Limits, R.S. Stein Goosebumps. You know, those are very short stories, but they leave you like, wow, and they are unforgettable. And especially with Twilight Zone, everybody knows about the Martians and their cookbook. In 30, I mean, they did that in 30 minutes. It doesn't take a long time if you don't have a lot of unnecessary filibuster, what I usually call it in a story. It's just about good content. It's like my mother could really cook, and she only had about 2 or 3 pans, but I tell you, she would have the best food cooked up in 2 or 3 pans. Today we got a food processor, we got a blender, we have a microwave, we have all of these types of equipment, and the food is sometimes it tastes okay. And sometimes you don't even get as much. And like I have more equipment than I have food. I'm just like, oh no! I remember my mother. She had some flour and some lard and a salt and sugar. She had the best rolls you ever wanted to taste it. Oh, my goodness, I mean, so it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes simple is better. I'm not saying I am the best by any means. No, but I think that I write well enough to at least worth reading and having some entertainment out of it. I would never say that I am the best. I applaud all people that write. It does take a special talent. I realize that now. I took it for granted when I was younger, but now that I write and other people read my book, they look at me and say, how did you do that? And I told them it has to be a gift, because I don't know. Once I start writing, it just happens. And sometimes I write so much I can't even put the pen down until my hands hurt.
Awesome. That is awesome. And you know, you're right. I really and truly believe that people are called to do a certain thing. And I know so many times we think of the word called as only being used in a cleric sense and being called to ministry. But I believe that everyone can have their own sense of ministry in what they do. Some people are called to be nurses, doctors, attorneys, teachers, you know, and there's something, sometimes we're simply called to be a mother or a father, not necessarily to a career, but to raise amazing citizens for the next generation. So I have to agree with you on that. We are definitely all have to walk in our God-given sense. Well, S R Longshore, I want to say thank you so much for being on with me today. We are out of time, but I have enjoyed my time with you today, and I think that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered some folks today. So thank you so much for being on. Last time, before you leave, though, can you remind everyone the title of your book, where can we pick up a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, Dr. Angela. Thank you again for having me. My name is S R Longshore, and I wrote a book called Extricate, EXTRICATE. You can find it at SR Longshore Rights with an S on the end of rights.com, or you can call the publisher Arthur House. If you would like to contact me directly, you can contact me at slongshore@cox.net, N-E-T.
I love it. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you again for having me.
And listeners, thank you for joining us as well. I hope that we have, say it with me, enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best. As always, may you continue to receive God's grace and mercy in all that you do. And until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.